you at this point in our game, ladies and gentlemen, I mentioned that the contestants, the three players, are about to write down in secret how much they are willing to wager on themselves in Final Jeopardy. But Joel, you, of course, because you finished in a deficit position, will not be playing Final Jeopardy. You're going to finish up Double Jeopardy in the lead with 7,100. Mark trailing you, as he was a few moments ago, by $550. And Don, that's a nice sign. Oh, no, Don, you played well for a bit and you ran into trouble, and unfortunately you didn't wind up with any cash at all, so you will not be able to play in our Final Jeopardy. Dale, you came up with a few incorrect questions at the wrong time, and as a result you wind up in a deficit situation. No cash for you. You don't owe us any money, of course. Bob and Patty, the bad news for the two of you, of course.
Dave,
What are snowflakes?
snowflakes is right, and that takes you to minus 2,800. Unfortunately, Dave, it is not going to be enough, as you know.
You guys have excellent reflexes, and I'm sure Charles is thinking that right now. He's standing there trying to get in, saying, wait a minute, I know youth will be served, but give me a break. Charles, you finished at minus 100, so you won't be around for Final Jeopardy.
Tobias, unfortunately, at minus 1,800. That means you will not be around to play in Final Jeopardy.
Scott.
Or the Bee Gees.
The Bee Gees, that's right, and that takes you to 5,100. You have just a shade more than half of Fred's total, and that means you're still alive in Final Jeopardy. But Karen, unfortunately, it just wasn't your day, and I'm sorry about that. We do have a prize for you back.
Patrick, you were good at getting yourself out of the hole, but unfortunately you have no money, and that means you will finish automatically.
Robert, let's count back up. That's it, and you're tied with Steve for the lead. And Marion, you got involved in a game against a couple of smoking guns who were very fast on that signaling button, unfortunately for you. And as a result, we can't keep you around for Final Jeopardy. But thanks for being here. We have Richie at minus 1,500. You couldn't get rolling. Mary Jane and Jason seem to be a little faster on the signaling button today, Richie. I'm sorry about that. You'll get our third place prize automatically. Carol.
What is the keystone?
The keystone is right, and that takes you to 2,800. You're in second place. Unfortunately for Patrick, he wasn't able to get out of the hole, and so he will wind up with a third place. Emily, bad news for you. You're at minus 4,000, and that means that you will not be around to compete in Final Jeopardy. You now have 13,500 to Nancy's 15,800, and although Delete won 34,000 on our last show, we have to say goodbye right now.
Sewer Byron, what is Ukraine? Ukraine. And so, Alba, a good try on your part. You wind up at minus 2,000, and even though you won over 20,000 yesterday.
Takes you to 27,600. It wasn't your day, was it?
I don't owe you the money, do I?
No, you do not. You do not owe us any money. As a matter of fact, because you finished in third place.
Lee, not a good day for you. You finished in the red, so we'll have to say goodbye. Maggie, you were 2,000 up, then you'd lose 2,000, then 2,000 up, then you'd lose 2,000, and you have no money now, so you cannot play in Final Jeopardy.
You missed it by 3, and it's a costly miss for you, Jason, because you wind up in the red, and so you won't be around to play in Final Jeopardy.
Ken.
What's a tabernacle?
That's right, and that takes you over 40,000. 40,600. Once again, most impressive. Laura on the board with 9,800. Susan, it was difficult to get on track against Ken, I know, but thank you so much for being with us. And Judy, you're at minus 200, and that means you don't get to play Final Jeopardy. Tom.
Moray Eel?
Moray Eel is right, and that takes you to 400 on the plus side. It ends the round, and Jenny, unfortunately, not in the red, but with no cash to play in Final Jeopardy.
Rats.
Yeah, because you're left with no money, and that means you won't be able to play in Final Jeopardy issues. All right, Bruce, bad news for you. As you know, you're in the red at 4,800, and that means you will not be around to play in Final Jeopardy. Jeff.
What is Kant?
Immanuel Kant. Yes. And that takes you to 14,800. You trail our champion Ken by about 5,000, but it's still a match. And Beth, at minus 800, you will not be around to play in Final Jeopardy.
This is unbelievable.
Ken?
Who's MacArthur?
MacArthur is right. That takes you to 18,200. And it is not a runaway game for you, so you will have to guard against Jeff in the final Jeopardy round. But Mary, unfortunately, you're in the red, so you won't play in that round. But David, unfortunately, finishing in the red, you won't be around, so it'll be a two-person. And Billy and Bernard, we are going to have to say goodbye to the two of you. Melissa.
Who is Travis?
Travis is right. That takes you up to 11,200. Paul in the lead, though, with 14,800. And Stuart, we have to say goodbye. Tommy?
Where's the wrinkle in time?
Well done. 1,600 more for you, taking you to 21,800. Emily with 8,200. And Diana Smith, minus 1,200, which means you won't get to play Final Jeopardy.
That's right, and it got you out of a hole, but unfortunately, you don't have any money, so you will not have anything to wager in Final Jeopardy.
Allison, you're at minus 2,000, and that's bad news for you in this tournament because it means you won't be around to compete in Final. Robert.
That's the Red Sea.
Red Sea, correct, taking you up to 15,200. Still within reach for you, obviously. And Jennifer, unfortunately, no money. You can't play in Final Jeopardy. Biomass. 9,900 for Carla. 16,600 for Ted, and unfortunately for Martin, no money. Got himself out of the hole, but has no money to wager in Final Jeopardy. Andromeda. Rachel, minus 2,000. You made a gutsy move there on that daily double. Sorry it didn't work out. You'll finish in third place. So you drop down to 10,400. You are still in the lead. William is second, and Ron, with no money, will not be around to play in Final Jeopardy. You've been watching me. Wilson.
Who's Dave Barrett? Yes, 16. Answer. The other daily double.
Office plants have died. Kathy?
Who is Irma Bombeck?
Correct, and that takes you to 24,400. The lead is yours. Jessica, 12,400, so it's not a runaway. And Wilson, it's going to be bye-bye. No, you weren't going to be able to play in Final Jeopardy with no money anyway. It's the Anvil.
14,800 for you, Martin. You trailed Dan by 200. And for Heather, this was not your day. You were against two guys who were really quick on that signaling device.
Drew, you went into the hole again, so you won't be around for Final Jeopardy.
Kevin, who's Leopold? Leopold, yes. Taking you to 36,600. The only one who'll be playing final with you is Joe Collette. You're finishing in the red, so we have to say goodbye.
Mandy, unfortunately, you finish in the red, so you will not be around to compete in Final Jeopardy. But Charlie.
What is Connecticut?
Connecticut is right. And with that, you wind up at 29,200. Vicky, that error on that $1,600 clue cost you, so you will wind up not playing Final Jeopardy. Tim, unfortunately, you have no money. It wasn't your day. Didn't work out particularly well. A bad start, and you just couldn't get it rolling. So you'll wind up with $1,000. Rufus. Deborah, bad news for you. You have no money. You're not in the red, though, but you have no money, which means you won't be around to play in Final Jeopardy. Withers. And bad news for you, Deborah. You wind up in the red, which means you don't get to compete in Final Jeopardy. 100. Murray, the youngsters were a lot faster on those signaling devices than you were today, so you're going to finish in third place and suffer persecution. I was hoping, Genevieve, that you would come up with a response there and ring in, but you're going to wind up at minus 200, and that means you are not going to be around to play in that clue. Kevin, you had no money, so you couldn't participate in the final today, but yesterday you earned $8,765. Sure. Brad,
What is the Pritzker?
Pritzker is right. And that was a fortuitous response for you, Brad. And I'm sure you know it. We're still going to play Final Jeopardy, however, but Jill, unfortunately, since you have no money, you will not be around for that particular. And that wraps up Double Jeopardy. And Nora, unfortunately, in a negative situation, will not be around for Final Jeopardy. Ken?
What is the Lincoln assassination?
That is right, and that takes you up to 12,000. Roger has no money to risk.
It's a two-day final, right?
Julia.
What is thumbnail?
Thumbnail, right you are again. That takes you to 30,400, a runaway game for you once again. Brandon, you couldn't get on track today. I mentioned a few moments ago that Julia is so fast on that signaling device, and she just kept beating you guys to it. But you're going to wind up taking home $1,000. That takes you up to 17,400. And it takes us to Final Jeopardy. However, Cindy at negative 800 will not be playing in Final Jeopardy.
And poor Josiah, you struggled there in the latter part, and so we have to say goodbye to you. You won't be around for the Final Jeopardy.
Catherine?
What are Clydesdales?
Yes. And that takes you to 23,200. Most impressive, but believe it or not a runaway. However, Dolly has no money, and that means she finishes in third place with Vandenberg Air Base. Ryan, you wound up in the red, which means you won't be around for Final Jeopardy. Drew, what is a tiller? Tiller, that's it, yes. But unfortunately, not enough to get you out of the hole, so you will not be around for Final Jeopardy. Jake.
What is Colorado?
You are right again, and that takes you up to 9,700. And we have bad news for you, Gabby, because you're in a negative situation. It means you won't be around for Final Jeopardy. Mary Lou.
Who is Hedy Lamarr?
That's it, and that takes you up to 6,800. Takes us to Final Jeopardy. Unfortunately, Tracy will not be participating in that. Gave it a... Michael?
What is the space race?
That is right, and with that you go to minus 1,600, but it'll do you no good. We have to say goodbye to you. Michael.
What is the Thane?
The Thane of Cawdor. Ellen, bad news for you. Unfortunately, you wind up in the red, which means you're going to finish automatically in third place. All right, you got yourself into trouble in Double Jeopardy, and that's unfortunate for you. You won't be around to play in Final Jeopardy. Joe, bad news for you. You're in the negative. You won't be around for Final Jeopardy. System. Boo Hiss Rebecca, you wind up in the red, which means you won't be around for Final Jeopardy. No. Austin.
Who is in ES?
And me, yes, sorry about that. Ryan, that drops you into a negative situation. You won't be around to deal with this subject in Final Jeopardy. Dan, this wasn't your day. You were ringing in a tad early, and things just didn't work out, so you won't be around for Final Jeopardy.
Yes. Oh, Boo Hiss for Dylan. He winds up in the red. It was a tough game. These were two very difficult challengers. You'll wind up in $1,000.
Andrew is the Dominican Republic. That's it. That adds to your lead. You're at an even 18,000. Ellie, you couldn't get things going today, unfortunately. It'll be greater than Andrew.
Is the mousetrap, and unfortunately, Dave, you weren't able. You took some chances. You started categories off at the bottom, and you wound up in the red. You'll go home with $1,000. John.
Who is Coleridge?
Coleridge is right, and Hamza, you kept digging your hole deeper and deeper, and we ran out of time, and as a result, you won't be around to play in Final Jeopardy.
And unfortunately for Lauren, she ends up in the red, and that means she won't be around for Final Jeopardy.
Jeff, bad news for you. You're going back home to Canada.
James. What is Niagara Falls? You are right, and that takes you to 66,181. Katie, unfortunately, got herself out of the hole, but not on the plus side, so she will wind up in third place.
Liz?
Who is Dorian Gray?
Yep, you came up with a correct response, but unfortunately, you got yourself into trouble earlier on. You're at negative 2,400, which means you won't be around for Final Jeopardy.
Sam, Boo Hiss, you're at negative 2,000. It didn't work out today. You're going home with 1,000. Brad, we'll come to you first. You finished in the red, which means you couldn't participate in Final Jeopardy. However, in the earlier game, you acquired 14,400 points. John, darn, you were looking good for a while. You faltered a bit, and you wound up at negative 200, which means you won't be here for Final. You're going, darn, you wind up at negative 2,400, and that means you will not participate in Final Jeopardy.
And the bestseller was called She Said. She Said. Oh, Ivory, darn, you have no money, so you will not be around to play in Final Jeopardy.
Matt.
What's Yahoo?
That's correct, and that brings us to the end of Double Jeopardy. Rebecca, unfortunately, because you're in the red, you won't be joining us for Final Jeopardy.
That's correct. That brings us to the end of Double Jeopardy. Unfortunately, Matt, you will not be joining us in Final Jeopardy. Kristen, what is a biographer? That's correct. That brings us to the end of Double Jeopardy, and unfortunately, you will not be joining us for Final Jeopardy.
All right, that's the end of the Double Jeopardy round. I'm afraid we're going to have to say goodbye to Joe, but...
All right, at the end of Double Jeopardy, I'm afraid Lonnie and Sean will not be joining us for Final today. It's always
hard to run into an 11-day champ, I imagine. Nikki, what's Dallas? Dallas is correct. $800. I'm sorry you're not going to be with us for final. It's been a lot of fun having you. Kelly, you did the right thing by wagering $2,000 on the Daily Double, but unfortunately we're going to have to say goodbye to you here. All right, at the end of Double Jeopardy, TJ, I'm afraid you're still in the hole. You're not going to be joining us for final today, but
Come to the end of Double Jeopardy. Shinsu, unfortunately, you will not be sitting in Final Jeopardy, but...
this Christian army has reopened Liverpool's Strawberry Field, a home for children in John Lennon's time. Renee.
What is the Salvation Army?
That is correct. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite get you back into the black, so you will not be joining us for Final Jeopardy. That is correct. You now have $19,000. That's a fantastic score, but still $2,200 behind Michael. Brenda, you were caught between two buzzsaws, as Alex liked to say. I'm afraid you won't be joining us for Final Jeopardy. Final clue, used as a Jewish greeting, it's the Hebrew word for peace. Troy.
What's shalom?
Correct. 32,000 even for you as we head into final. And I'm sorry, we couldn't quite get you over the finish line. One clue away from making it to final.
End of Double Jeopardy. Maggie, you will not be joining us.
Hope. What is Juneteenth?
No. Hannah.
What is Mardi Gras?
That is correct. It's time for Final Jeopardy. Unfortunately, we have to say goodbye to Hope.
Pacific, and even $29,000 for Carl, $2,200 for Edith and Anders. You have no money, so we have to bid you farewell.
Correct. What is manpower? That is correct. Canada had a Minister of Manpower. Stephen, I'm so sorry you had to keep swinging in that round because you were flirting with negative amounts, and you know what happened. It didn't work out for you. But thank you so much for coming.